From June 25th to September 1st, 2014, the Tech Museum of Innovation in San Jose is hosting the Photography of Modernist Cuisine. The exhibition features 76 large photographs taken over a 7-year period by former Microsoft CTO Nathan Myhrvold and his team. But why photos of food at the Tech Museum? Nathan says, "Cool photos are a way to give people a vision of food they've never seen before. Cooking is one of the few science experiments we all do. We're all familiar with how things can turn out through cooking. The technology industry is about people rethinking things, using knowledge and engineering to affect different outcomes. There are a lot of foodies working in the technology industry here in Silicon Valley who are passionate and curious about food."
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here in San Jose, which is the capital of the technology industry in Silicon Valley in so many ways. And it's thrilling to be here at the Tech Museum, which this is not my first time. I've actually been here several times. When I had downtime between meetings, I would swing by and come through, because I love museums and I love technology. So, as it was mentioned, I have a long career in technology, but I have an even longer career liking food. I always loved to eat. When I was 9 years old, I announced to my mother that I was going to cook Thanksgiving dinner all by myself. So I had to go to the store all by myself. I went to the library, got this whole pile of books. I actually checked out Escoffier, and it turns out this is not that useful for Thanksgiving dinner. Man, I gotta make all those stocks first. So I set that one aside for that. And at other points in my life, I took a leave of absence from Microsoft at one point to go to chef school in France. So I was really into it, but it's only in the last 7 years or so that I went into it even deeper and decided to write this book called Modernist Cuisine, which is over in the case there. Now, originally I thought, hey, I'm gonna do a big book. I thought big was like 600 pages. Well, it turned out by the time we were done, it was 2,438 pages. So 600 is like nothing to me now, but at the time, it seemed huge. And also at the time, I was concerned because I wanted the book to talk about the science of cooking, about how cooking really works, and about modern cooking techniques. And all of those things can seem a little bit daunting. A lot of people are turned off of science or afraid of science. It's one of the great reasons for a museum like the Tech Museum, because it really shows how science and technology are approachable and interesting and fun. But anyway, with this issue of the book, how can we make it approachable? Well, the other thing I was interested in, like my whole life, is photography. So I thought, let's use cool photos as a way to get people hooked, to show people a vision of food that they had never seen before, and get them intrigued. And sometimes that's stuff that is, frankly, gross. Over there is a picture of a trichinella worm embedded in pork flesh. Kind of looks like something the Hubble Space Telescope might have taken. It doesn't look like it at all, but that really is what it's about, is this trichinella thing. Well, you have to talk about food safety. What better way to make food safety fun, at least a little more fun, by having a cool photo? So we did that in the first book. Then we did a second book called Modernist Cuisine at Home. And the photos really struck a nerve, so much so that we decided we need to do a third book just of photos called The Photography of Modernist Cuisine. And that's where the idea of this whole exhibit came up. That as cool as the photos were in a book, our books are expensive, not everyone can afford them, not everyone can see them. What if we made really big versions of the photos and had a museum show? And we decided early on that we would do it in science museums because cooking is one of the few science experiments we all do. We're all very familiar with how things can turn out in the kitchen, or sometimes not turn out. That's why it's still an experiment. There's a lot of scope for things to go right and wrong. And that ultimately led to this exhibit, which I'm thrilled to tell you about, and we'll walk around and talk about some of the images in a minute. This is the second place that the exhibit has been. We started in Seattle because that was home to us. And we're super excited to have it here because it turns out a lot of our customers, a lot of the people who love our books, are Silicon Valley people. San Jose, and if you're a book person, you wind up getting these reports where they estimate where your customers are. And Seattle is big for us, of course, because we're well known there. But the Bay Area is like our second largest market, because the technology industry is about people rethinking things, using knowledge of science and engineering to affect different outcomes. There's a lot of foodies that work at tech companies, and the kind of book that we created, one that really tries to explain how things work rather than tell you what to do, is something I think has a lot of resonance here. You know, a classic recipe says, do this, do this, do this. And if you do those things, just like they tell you, you'll get the result. But that was never satisfying for me. I always want to know, well, why do you do that? And if you change something, how else would it be? Well, strictly speaking, it's not necessary to know how. Unless you're curious. You know, we like to say that our books are for people that are passionate and curious about food. And I think this exhibit is an even more accessible way to do that. You don't have to buy an expensive book. You can come here to the Tech Museum, and you can get exposed to all kinds of things that are a vision of food you haven't seen before. So that's pretty much what I had to say. What's the next part? Okay, well maybe we should do the tour.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
We're very good.
We call this 50 Shades of Green. It's just a big Savoy cabbage, and one of the ideas that we have in the book is that food can be very beautiful. But we usually don't stop to take a look at food closely. And when you do look at it closely, you find it really is amazing. I mean, in this case, there's tons of different shades of green. This photo has appeared in a design magazine that wanted to use it because they thought all the different shades of chartreuse green were a color inspiration for decorators. I thought that was cool. Here's our levitating hamburger. So, if you want to tell people how to make a sandwich, you have this fundamental problem of how do you take a photograph of the sandwich. And we've all been in burger places or so forth where you see this perfect plumped burger that is nothing like what you actually get served. But even that is so condensed you can't see how to make it. Well, in engineering, there's a thing called the exploded diagram. You'll see this for things like engines and other mechanical stuff. And the exploded diagram is a whole thing where they've taken it apart. In fact, the first person to make a exploded diagram, so far as we can tell, was Leonardo da Vinci. And one of his, you can't see it super well here, but one of his notebooks has a mechanism he designed in this exploded diagram fashion. So we thought we would do an exploded diagram for the hamburger because not only is it kind of cool looking, it shows you how to assemble it. It shows you all of the layers very clearly and distinctly. Whereas once you squish it all into the burger, you can't see the layers anymore, so you can't really see how you made it. So it's an example of something that is got, on one hand, a real nerdy pedagogical purpose. Okay? It's an exploded diagram of food. On the other hand, it's kind of cool looking. And so once we got into this, we see down here there's another exploded sandwich. We just love doing them. Here's a tomato. And just tomato up close. Here is a photo that I really love. we have a fantastic market in Seattle called Pike Place Market. There are farmers markets everywhere. I'm sure there's farmers markets in this area. In the middle of summer, which is when we took this, there's such a fantastic variety of different vegetables. So in this case, we got an aquarium and some potting soil, and we put these in because we wanted to show both the beauty of the vegetables and the connection to the earth. There's a great restaurant in New York City called Dirt Candy, which serves vegetarian cuisine. And I always think of the name of that restaurant when I see this because it's dirt, but it's also these incredibly beautiful vegetables. Yes?
How did you take the leap from your scientific curiosity to go to the rigors of a stager in a restaurant, and what was that experience like, and how did that make you jump to chef school?
But then I never actually worked in the field I'm qualified for. It's fine. So I have degrees in physics and everything except computer science. So I'm chief technology officer for Microsoft. Well, I love cooking so much. Maybe I ought to get even more serious about it and go to chef school in France. Right? Why not? Well, I was busy. I was working on other things, but I applied to chef school in France. They wouldn't take me unless I had professional work experience. First, they said they didn't want to take me at all. They gave me this oral exam over the phone for like 2 hours. And they were really hoping, like, to put me off. But I should get all the questions right. So that's like, yeah. Okay, so you've got to go work in a restaurant. So I arranged to work at a restaurant in Seattle called Rovers for one night a week. It wound up being for 2 years. So I'd leave Microsoft at about noon, and I'd get over and I would cook until 10 and go home. And I learned a tremendous amount there. I probably learned as much or more in making me do that than in the actual chef school. Then I had to go to Bill, and I had to ask for Bill Gates, and ask for a leave of absence to go to chef school. Which I'm the only person to ever do that. It was not a foregone conclusion he would say yes, but we worked it out. So then I went there. And then after it was done, I went back to work at Microsoft and did for many more years before I eventually retired. It was very interesting to do this for 2 reasons. One is that cookbooks that we typically buy tell you a set of things to do about making a specific recipe, but there's a million things that chefs do in the kitchen that no one has ever put into a cookbook, at least not anyone that I've ever seen. So I learned a tremendous amount in the kitchen. I learned the importance of timing. Oh my God, at home, you like work on a recipe and you think, okay, I really want this to turn out and I'm gonna work on it. And maybe I've got guests coming over. But oh my God, in the restaurant, you've got all these people ordering all these different things. You have to coordinate all this stuff. People are very annoyed if 3 out of 4 of the people get their dish and the 4th one doesn't. And then people in my group at Microsoft found out I was doing this. And I discovered that because one night the chef, Terry, comes over to me and says, "You must go out to table 4. That last thing, there's something they're very unhappy. They want to talk to the man who made it. You have to go out." Shut up. I've done that before. And so I go out. Of course, it's all these people from my group, and they're just messing with me. They weren't unhappy at all. But so that was I had a tremendous experience. For arguably 400 or 500 years, France was the place that the whole world recognized as the bastion of cuisine. And it was wonderful to learn all the classic French techniques. More recently, Spain and America and tons of other places have become much more prominent in the world of cooking. So I don't think anyone would say today that the high-end cooking world is centered in France, but it's still a fascinating experience to learn. Another question or two?
I actually have one.
Yeah, great.
So you won the barbecue competition in one of the great barbecue places in the world, Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So describe that and how proud are you of winning of that distinction?
Well, both that and actually the books are both sort of team efforts, so I really can't take a lot of credit for it. But it's a funny story. I read about a guy in Memphis, Tennessee, who had won several world championships of barbecue, and he had invented and patented a unique barbecue machine. So I looked the guy up, which is non-trivial. Of course, this is before the internet. This is like late 80s, or early 90s. And, I write to him, and he says, well, I'll send you a letter. Well, a couple days later, I get this non-disclosure agreement in the mail. He won't talk to me unless I sign an NDA. Well, I signed a lot of NDAs in Microsoft, so fine, I signed it, I sent it back. Well, the next thing I know, we get this FedEx box, full of ice and cooked ribs with instructions how to heat it up. So I heat them up. And my God, they're the best ribs I've ever had in my life. I mean, they are so good, it's ridiculous. So I call the guy up and I say, hey, okay, I have to buy one of your machines now. You have me, I signed the NDA, you sent me the ribs. He says, well, I don't sell a cooker to someone I don't like. In fact, I don't sell a cooker to most of my friends. So I had to convince him I was worthy. This is a 3-hour phone call. At the end of which he says, well, Nathan, I think I'm ready to sell you a cooker. Well, this takes like another year to get the damn thing, and it's this huge production. And I get it, and I make ribs a few times, and it's the best I've ever done. But they're not like his. It's like, oh, damn it, I'm hooked now. There's no turning back. So I call the guy up and I said, John, I really got to come down to Memphis, and you have to show me, because there's clearly, he tried to talk to me over the phone, and I wasn't getting it somehow. He said, well, we have a little contest down there. Why don't you come on down in May? So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go down to Memphis, and I'm going to have a couple hours of barbecue instruction. I'm going to go to Graceland. I'm going to eat some ribs, go to Beale Street. That'll be cool. It'll be for a weekend. Well, what I don't understand is the little contest they have is the World Championship. And they put me on the team, which is a gigantic, big deal. There's only 5 people can be on the team. And down there, competitive barbecue is most people on the pro barbecue circuit, professionals. It's sort of like NASCAR, right? If you think NASCAR is a few people driving around in their sports cars, no, actually it's this damn industry with this. Well, that's what barbecue is. The year we were there, 276 people, or teams, competed. So I worked 14 to 18 hours a day for 3 days. I trimmed 300 pounds of ribs. I trussed a whole hog for the first time. There's a hog on ice on the trail. We trust him good. So I'm hugging a big dead pig. Anyway, as the thing went on, they put me in charge of 2 of the dishes, and we actually won first place on both of those. And we won Team of the Year, so we actually won World Championship of Barbecue. It's 99.999% because of John Willingham and his team, but I was there. It meant I worked hard. And if you're around this flight for 3 days, you have to shower repeatedly before the smoke comes out of your hair.
Tim, what is the relationship between this exhibit and much bigger problems?
So when you do something with food, you build your creative confidence. And when you build your creative confidence to do something as simple as preparing a great dish or to take a great photograph, maybe you have the creative confidence to take on really big problems. And that's what we want to do at the Tech, is to build people's creative confidence to take on small challenges and also big challenges. And ultimately, we want people to create technology that benefits humanity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nathan, how does this exhibit tie in with your world-changing projects?
Well, I'm involved in lots of different things, from designing new kinds of nuclear reactors, trying to eradicate malaria, inventing all kinds of new high-tech things, running a tech company. and also writing cookbooks. And so this is one of those many things. It's mostly, of course, about the cooking and food things, but I think my passion for technology and science and explaining how things work is also part of the deal.
Right. Nathan, when you get up in the morning, you have so many interests. How do you decide which one is going to occupy your day?
I look at my schedule and see what my handlers have arranged for me.
How did you...
I love being interested in multiple things. And the world actually frowns on that in lots of ways. The world really rewards specialization and people becoming very specialized in very specific, narrow areas. And I've always fought that. I've sometimes said, look, if I really could focus on one thing, maybe I'd actually be successful. But I like the diversity of it. I like having all these interesting things that are so different.
How did you ever become an expert on designing nuclear reactors?
Well, I actually have a PhD in physics from Princeton.
Makes sense.
I was a postdoc with Stephen Hawking at the University of Cambridge, and I have a long-term interest in energy. So when our company decided to see if there were ways that we could fight the climate crisis by designing a new kind of nuclear reactor, which is safer and has a whole variety of other great characteristics, it was natural to get involved.
And you're also interested in paleontology, and I think you have a T-Rex in your room, in your living room?
I do. It's hard to miss.
And you were partly responsible for digging it up. Can you tell us about that story?
So I've done research in paleontology for many years. I've published papers in leading paleontology journals. I have been on digs or even co-led digs around the world. Paleontology is fun. And some people sometimes ask me a silly question of, why did I get interested in dinosaurs? I said, no, it's why did you lose interest? We all cared about dinosaurs when we were little. I just never lost that.
You're also interested in the SETI project, the search for extraterrestrials, and you're particularly fascinated by the movie Contact. And as I recall, I think you've been likened to the eccentric billionaire scientist in that movie?
When my kids saw the movie, afterwards they said, "Dad, that creepy rich guy, is that you?" And I said,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You've got to go to lunch, but thank you so much for the interview.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. The technology industry is about people rethinking things, using knowledge of science and engineering to affect different outcomes. There's a lot of foodies that work at tech companies, and the kind of book that we created, one that really tries to explain how things work rather than tell you what to do, is something I think has a lot of resonance here. You know, a classic recipe says, do this, do this, do this. And if you do those things, just like they tell you, you'll get the result. But that was never satisfying for me. I always want to know, well, why do you do that? And if you change something, how else would it be? Well, strictly speaking, it's not necessary to know how. Unless you're curious. You know, we like to say that our books are for people that are passionate and curious about food. And I think this exhibit is an even more accessible way to do that. You don't have to buy an expensive book. You can come here to the Tech Museum, and you can get exposed to all kinds of things that are a vision of food you haven't seen before. So that's pretty much what I had to say. What's the next part?